Hello and welcome to this CATIA prismatic machining instructional video. Today what we're going to be looking at is how do we go about engraving on a part using the the prismatic machining workbench. This is a requirement for your eTech 322 project. You're required to engrave on the clock face that you have machined in your labs. To do this, there are a number of things that one needs to have. First of all, one needs to have an idea of the design you want to engrave, and this might actually be a picture that you have, and you may want to trace over the outline of that picture. In addition to that, you're going to have to put in some numbers to represent the 4 points of the clock, and that's going to require you to use some fonts in your drawing. So we're going to just use the part that we've been working with in class to just quickly show you how to go about getting yourself set up to do this. If you open up this part up, and I'm going to jump back up into my process, you recall that in class we did the planning of pretty much all the operations required to machine this part from a rectangular piece of stock, which I'll unhide here for you to see. So there were profiling operations around the outside, pocketing, facing to, of course, and then center drilling and drilling the 4 corner holes. So this is where things stood pretty much at the end of the major machining on this part. I'm going to go ahead and rehide the raw stock. So in order for us to go about setting up an engraving, what I'm going to do is do some engraving on the bottom face here. I have to start off by creating a cat drawing using this part. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go over here to the Start menu and just jump right into the Drafting Workbench. I'm going to use an ANSI standard drawing, and I'm going to use a B-size sheet. I'm going to hit OK, and here's my sheet. And then what I'm going to do is insert a view of the part, probably a view looking down on it, right onto this sheet. So I'm going to go over here to the Views toolbar, select Front View, even though it'll really be a top view that I'm picking. I'm going to go back to the Process window where the part is displayed. I'm going to select on the part here in the tree first. I need to do this for the view selection to work correctly. And then I'm going to select on this bottom plane here to indicate the orientation of the view that's going to be inserted. And that can be seen down here in the bottom right hand corner. So let's click on this. Here's the part. I can change the orientation if I want using the compass up here on the top, but this looks pretty good, so I'm just going to click down off the view to insert it. And there we go. We have basically a view of our part inserted onto a drawing. Okay, now that I have the view in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert an image. As I said, this image will be one that you can trace the boundary over to give you the design of your engraving. So I'm going to go over here to the Insert menu, and I'm going to go down here to Picture, and you will have, of course, to navigate through your file system to find where you've saved the picture. Mine are right here, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular file, which is a JPEG file, hit Open, and you can see the picture there, the boundary of the picture, the extent of the picture, and I'm going to just try and eyeball it and get it centered right here at the bottom of the pocket. As you can see, it's Western's logo, and it's been inserted into the drawing. Now this is a image, so it's a bunch of pixels, so in order for you to do an engraving, you have to define paths along which the cutter is going to move. So you're going to have to define or trace over the boundary of the logo, the geometry that you want. To do this, we're going to have to work with the geometry tools, and these tools typically are on the toolbar. I don't see mine anywhere. They may be hidden off. I'm going to check and see. No, I don't see them here. Actually, here they are on my other monitor, so I'm going to pull them down here. So these are the geometry tools. If I look at this logo, the wave pattern, these are the waves, I guess they represent the sea around Bellingham. I'm going to use the spline tool to help me trace over these. So I can use the spline tool, and you can see how I can just go around and, using the spline tool, sort of indicate where the boundary of that part of the image is. So that's one spline. I'm going to do another spline for the top edge. this bottom wave. And then let's just do the other wave too, just so that we have a little bit more geometry to play around with. And it's up to you how much how much time you want to spend on doing something like this. You can, of course, zoom in and get it a lot more accurately. It's up to you, of course. I'm going to just do one more curve here. And there we go. So we have 4 curves. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I said, these are going to become curves that we're going to use to drive one of our operations, our curve follow operations, which will actually do the engraving. So once you've done all your tracing work on your image, you probably can get rid of that image. So I'm just going to get rid of it by deleting it. And then you should see your trace geometry appearing in your window. So as I said too, you're going to also be required to put numbers in on your clock design. So just to show you how that works, I'm going to go ahead and use the text tool here, and I'm going to insert some text that we're going to also use to engrave. So I'm going to click on the text tool. I'm going to click down here. And let's just type in the name of our class, eTech 322. And I'm going to hold on the Shift key and just type in one more line here, final project. There we go. Now I'm going to change the size a little bit, so I'm going to come up here to the size. I'm going to make it maybe 5 to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to try and reposition this. You can hold on the Shift key if you want to actually to kind of position it a little bit more accurately. I'm going to change the font too. I'm going to change it to a Times Roman. I can find it somewhere, and there we go. That actually makes it a little bit more compact. Let's see if I can get it positioned a little bit better. Let me try making it a little larger too and see what it looks like at 7. That might be a little bit too large, but maybe what I can do is double click on this and then move the control maybe to a separate line by holding the Shift key and hitting enter. Just move it up again. There we go. So we have some text. Layout wise, maybe it's too cramped on the bottom, so I'm going to move these up a bit and then just move this up. And if you want to, of course, you can do things like playing around with the justification of the text, center justification as is shown here. Okay, so what I have done here is I have traced over part of the image that I brought in, and I've added some font. Now fonts are not defined, at least not at this moment, as lines. These are basically bitmaps which overlap the drawing. So this is not going to work for me to be able to define an operation using a curve follow. What I need to do is convert these pix maps of the letters into lines, like the wave patterns. So in order for me to do this, what I have to do is I have to save this file into a format. The format that we use is called a DXF format. This is a format that was developed by Autodesk for the AutoCAD drawing application. So the way I would do this is I would come over here to File, and I would do a Save As. And right now the Save As type is cat drawing. What I'm going to do is use the flyout and pick on DXF. So I'm going to save this to DXF file. I'm going to just navigate to my folder where this example is. I'm going to just go ahead and save this. As a DXF file. So now that I've saved that, what I'm going to do, and this kind of seems a little bit strange, I'm going to open that file, and when I open that file you'll see the difference between what you see here and what the DXF file has in it. So I'm going to do File Open, and I am going to navigate to that location. And here's the DXF file. It has a strange icon on it, but this is definitely it here. You can see the type over here, DXF. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And DXF files always open up in the drafting workbench, regardless of where you are when you hit the file open. So let's hit open. You see this converting data window down here, and there we go. We have a DXF file that was opened. Looks very similar to the file that we exported a few minutes ago. In fact, that file is available here. If I go to Drawing 2, this is the file that we exported, and then this DXF file here is the one we just opened up, and it appears to us in the drafting workbench. Now if you look closely though, you'll notice that the font has been converted into what we call a vector boundary, meaning that the boundary is now made up of pretty much line segments. So each boundary, if I zoom in further, you can see this, and that gives us the opportunity now to be able to go in and use this geometry to control how a engraving tool is going to move to be able to cut it. Okay, so let's go ahead and use this geometry to go ahead and define the geometry for our engraving operation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a rectangle around the elements that I want to be part of the engraving pattern, highlight it as you can see here, and then I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to go back to my part. So this is the part here. This part actually is it's visible within a CAD process. So I'm actually going to have to go into the part design workbench. Right now I'm in the prismatic machining workbench. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to double click on the part so that I'm now within the part design workbench, as you can see over here. And since I'm going to want to engrave on this bottom face, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a sketch that coincides with this bottom face. So I'm going to go ahead here and click on the sketcher, click on the bottom face, and I have the part lined up. Looking down on it, top 0 on the top right hand corner of the part. And since I copied previously the engraving from the drawing, this was copied, I'm going to go and paste it now onto this sketch. So I'm just going to right click, or actually Control V to paste, and it pastes that geometry. You don't see anything, but if you zoom out far enough, you should be able to eventually come to a part of the sketch where that geometry is visible. So in this case it pasted it all the way up here on the top right hand corner. So I'm going to again drag the mouse around it, highlight it, and then I can move it and reposition it to approximately where I want the engraving to be. And then click down, and that geometry now is positioned on that sketch. You can see if you move around, if you rotate, that geometry is now on that same sketch that we created. It's positioned right in this pocket for us to work with. So I'm just going to exit from the sketch. You notice it turns white, and if you zoom in closely, you'll really get the idea now of how the DXF file is set up. You'll notice that These spline curves here are actually made up of a lot of very small lines, and these dots represent the start and end points of these lines. Similarly, the letters from the fonts, when you converted the DXF file, that conversion process took the font and generated boundaries for those fonts, and these boundaries are made up of very small line segments. But it works. We have the geometry now that we need to be able to go ahead and move into planning our operations for engraving. The operations we're going to use are curve follows, and that particular activity will be covered in another video. So hopefully this helps you in setting up your engraving pattern for your final project in 322.